This series is a critical commentary about an expired fundraising effort from Orbital Assembly on NetCapital.com, their third in 2 years. This is not investment advice. The facts we present come mainly from their own pitch deck materials, as well as third-party websites, online biography pages, and SEC filings. As always, with any financial or investment decision, do your own due diligence to come to your own conclusions. Welcome to this series from the Common Sense Skeptic as we go through the now closed third fundraising drive for Orbital Assembly on NetCapital in the past 2 years. Orbital Assembly, or OA as they call themselves now in the short form, have to date relied very heavily on the NetCapital crowd to fund their activities. Here's how they made out this time compared to their previous rounds. The first time NetCapital helped raise money for Orbital Assembly back in January of 2021, they were hoping to sell 4 million shares at a price of 25 cents each to raise $1 million. And they came very close, hitting $995,000 at the closing bell in April of 2021. Their second round, launched in November of 2021, offered to sell 9,523,809 shares at a new share price of 42 cents apiece. That round closed on April 30th of 2022, but only sold 3,156,548 shares for a total raise of $1,325,750.16. The third round opened on November 22nd of 2022, offering 523,809 shares at a new higher price of $2.10 per share, but it only sold 69,271 shares for a total raise of $145,469.10. Now that their round is over, we're going to go through their pitch deck frame by frame and detail by detail to see how far Orbital Assembly has come in the past 2 years, having raised about $2.5 million on this platform. As significant differences between the three presentations come up, we'll compare this presentation to the past two as to what goals and timelines were declared and how they said they intended at the time to spend the money they raised. Here we go with frame number 1. By now, everyone following this company should recognize this image. The station shown in this frame is actually a recycled image dating back to at least 2019. It is the same Von Braun station that John Blinkow unveiled when his Gateway Foundation was the organization getting all the free positive press about it. At no point in this presentation is this particular station referred to as what this company intends to build. The money being raised during this campaign is not going to be put towards the construction of the station in this photo. Other things that we notice right off the bat, the logo for OAC was changed after their fundraising effort to reflect Voyager Station, whereas previously the blue circle element of their logo represented the even more outlandish Gateway Spaceport, which is this image that flooded the media prior to first assembly, and those claims go as far back as 2018. This is the station represented by this element in their prior logo. And why they bothered to trademark "We Provide Gravity" is a mystery, since they presently have no such ability, and their aspirational timeline of beating their competition to this goal by a decade seems more than aspirational considering who their competitors are. More on that later. Moving into the second frame, the first two statements are repeated from the first frame. We can get rid of those. For the next statement, yes, gravity in space may alleviate serious medical conditions due to weightlessness, but that doesn't necessarily equate to profitable operations. That's a bit of a stretch. And so is their belief that gravity on the station will allow people to stay in orbit longer, reducing staffing costs by $150 million per astronaut tenant. Two things on this. First, how much are they planning on paying these crew members that would cost them that much money to lift to orbit in the first place? And second, that belief is wholly unsupported. Rotating the station might produce suitable artificial gravity, but not true gravity. And there have been no human studies conducted on the ISS that can confirm a rotating system creating artificial gravity is a suitable substitute for the real thing where humans are concerned. The right-hand column states that only Orbital Assembly has more than 5 years in active artificial gravity design with multiple patents pending. 5 years prior to the opening of this funding round would have been 2017, and that predates when John Blinkow announced Voyager Station in 2019 by 2 years. According to LinkedIn, 2017 also predates architect Tim Alatorre's involvement in OAC from September of 2019, and that makes sense because it predates the founding date for Orbital Assembly, which was August 21st of 2019, according to opencorporates.com. Those points are small potatoes compared to the next claim, where Orbital Assembly purports to have mission operations for large-scale on-orbit assembly. To clarify, for people who have never seen material on this company before, they do not have any assembly projects in space. So saying only Orbital Assembly has this would not be an accurate statement. And they claim only they have the most recent sponsored report on the effects of microgravity and artificial gravity countermeasures. The paper they are referring to is a review co-authored by Drs. Ronke Olabisi and Mae Jemison. The paper is mentioned here as if Orbital Assembly sponsored the paper, but since you can download this paper directly from other sources, those sources obviously also have it. Hell, we've got a copy of it. We can send it to you, or give you the link so you can download it directly. And to be clear, this publication is a review of previous work, which is why the references section is 14 pages long. It is not a research paper. These are two very different types of publications. And since this paper was titled as a review, that means all of the research material in it was previously available, just not compiled in this format. The third frame shows what they're calling the Pioneer-class Space Business Park with Gravity. 4 capsule-shaped enclosures and 4 docking ports connected by short, tube-shaped passageways. Honestly, these CGI capsules look a little messed up, unless you can make heads or tails out of the holes in the side. Either way, here's what they're saying. 2 to 3.5 years construction time, with the entire structure capable of holding up to 54 people within an interior volume of 4,000 cubic meters. That's approximately 4 times the interior volume of the ISS, with 9 times as many people aboard. So if we take a quarter of this structure, 1 capsule and 1 docking bay, that's supposed to be the same interior volume as the ISS. So let's put it up against the ISS. This is not to scale by any stretch, but the ISS needs to be shrunk down to accommodate the large fan structures hanging off the frame. There's 2 main types of appendages. These are the solar panels that power the station, and these are the radiators that control the temperature inside the station. This is what's required for a volume of roughly 1,000 cubic meters and a crew of 6. According to their information posted here, this quarter section of the Pioneer Station CGI would have roughly the same volume, not counting the docked Dream Chaser, and would be expected to hold up to 14 people at a time. Where's their solar power array? Where's their cooling system? Well, it's kind of hard to tell from here, but the solar array is the beige panels in behind a habitation capsule, in approximately this shape. Orbital Assembly would have you believe that this amount of surface area is enough solar panels to power this entire part of the station, and we still have no idea where their cooling panels are located. In the fourth frame is where Orbital Assembly tries to convince you that they have a machine that can autonomously build truss structures in space. This unit is referred to as the D-Star, the demo model for their future P-Star prototype. The animations used in previous presentations show a design that was patented by John Blinkow that takes elements in one end and welds them together into truss that comes out the other end. So we're going to show you what Orbital Assembly actually came up with for their live-action demo on June 19th of 2021. Keep in mind this event was advertised as being a demonstration of their fully autonomous, patent-pending technology capable of building ring trusses in orbit. But it turned out to be anything but. Here's what the unit and the output look like. The machine in yellow lined up gray pre-assembled side panel frames that look to be about 8 feet tall and 16 feet long. Just to show you how we figured this, if this operator standing closest to the panels is about 6 foot, the panel is about 30% taller than him, and if you laid him down end to end, the panel is about 2.5 of him long. These pre-assembled 16x8 side panels are mated at one end to an 8x8 tube frame by insertion pins, a process that had to be done by hand. They were not welded together autonomously, as shown in the animation. Then the other end of that same panel was mated to another panel without using an 8x8 tube frame, giving no structural support at all to the middle of what is now a 32-foot long panel with failure points in the center of that span. Further, if you take a look at the structure being produced, the side panels have cross members for additional support, but the top and bottom faces do not, which is easier to see from this angle. Taking a look at the overall yellow D-Star device, it is at least 16 feet wide, 8 feet tall, and 32 feet long if it was set on the ground. What launch vehicle do they plan on using to lift this behemoth to orbit? Without considering whatever power supply they're looking at using, you're already up to 4,100 cubic feet or 116 cubic meters. But of course, the biggest problem with this demonstration would be the fact that even if it was fully automated as promised, even if it was welded together properly, the undeniable fact is that this machine produced truss in a straight line. This machine can't make a curved structure, and their entire sales pitch centers around being able to build rings they can spin. So despite the victory lap the team took at the end of this show, this demonstration failed to produce three major aspects of the proprietary system they claim to be able to build. Frame 5 is a crosscut of a Pioneer capsule, and this image is horribly confusing, low-res, and nonsensical. We went looking for a better image from other media outlets and it still didn't help. If there's supposed to be gravity on this station, it is not represented in this image. Look at the direction of everybody's feet. The four people in this image appear to be in weightlessness. The compartments don't seem to have access doors, and honestly, having a common corridor walk-through space is a complete waste. The corridor would take up considerable volume that you would have to provide oxygen, pressure, and temperature control to without it serving any real function. So there's nothing intelligent about this design or this image. Again, they claim the station can hold up to 54 space tenants for stays lasting months. And the kicker, they think they'll be profitable in as soon as 28 months. Well, if they ever give a price tag for what they proposed this station would cost in the first place, we could run the numbers on how unlikely that would be. Groceries alone are going to be a massive expense that they haven't accounted for in this presentation. Frame 6 depicts Orbital Assembly's idea of an orbital ecosystem. We're going to put a pin in this one and come back to it later. In Frame 7, Orbital Assembly would like you to believe they have the following competitive advantages. They claim first mover status, with an asterisk that doesn't refer to anything to clarify it at the bottom of the frame. They think they can provide 0.57 gravity, without any prior large-scale or long-term experiments to validate that claim, which, going back to the top, isn't true gravity, and no one can say with certainty what effects half a G versus a full G of rotational force will have on a human in the long term, never mind the other rigors of space. They claim the largest capacity, again with asterisks referring to a clarification that doesn't exist at the bottom of the frame, and they claim the most power of 200 kilowatts. On this, we can do the math by comparing this unit in the picture to the ISS. The massive solar arrays on the ISS, after their recent upgrade, generate 120 kilowatts, and there's no chance the surface area of Pioneer is capable of exceeding that. Let's remove all the backgrounds and deal just with this model, using the one known measurement in this image, the length of the SNC Dream Chaser. The Dream Chaser blueprint shows it's 30 feet long, or about 9 meters. By that scale, this distance from airlock to airlock is about 31.5 meters, or 105 feet, which seems to be in line with the outer rim of the solar array. Total footprint is about 780 square meters, or 8,400 square feet. The inner rim seems to align with the outer edge of the circular trussing, or the back end of the airlock component. That's around 8 meters, or 27 feet in from the outer edge, leaving a void in the middle. The outside circumference of the solar array encapsulates around 780 square meters, or around 8,400 square feet. The center void accounts for around 190 square meters, or a little over 2,000 square feet. That leaves 590 square meters of surface area, or around 6,350 square feet. So how does this compare to the ISS? Well, according to NASA, the solar panels on the ISS cover 27,000 square feet, or 2,500 square meters, to generate the 120 kilowatts mentioned earlier. So, all things being equal, Pioneer would be lucky to manage a quarter of that. Call it 30 kilowatts being generous. A very far cry from the 200 kilowatts of power they claim. And as for the claim for largest volume, that's just more asterisks that refer to clarifications that don't appear on the frame. And we've already compared their CGI model against the very real ISS. Frame 8, let's rattle this one off quickly. There's no realistic evidence that launch costs are going to drop by 99% in the next 2 years. Period. Full stop. There might be a satellite boom, but Orbital Assembly is not a launch provider, nor a satellite manufacturer. And the last point is COTS and COGS. COTS is an acronym, stands for Commercial Off the Shelf, and COGS is short for Cost of Goods Sold. Neither of these terms apply to anything OAC is promising. They would be completely reliant upon outside suppliers and subcontractors with no influence over the pricing of the items they need to buy, which is practically everything. Frame 9, the Orbital Assembly Strategic Roadmap. This has changed a lot in the past 2 years, and to call this aspirational would be a candidate for Understatement of the Year. One of the first things that people paying attention to this company over the years will notice is that the benchmarks from previous fundraising rounds that were not realized have been abandoned. Their first funding round on NetCapital was all about the development of their in-orbit drone variants. The second funding round was supposed to be the Gravity Ring Demonstrator and P-Star. But nowhere on this frame, from the third round, is the P-Star mentioned. And that's supposed to be the unit launched into orbit to provide their proof of concept ring truss. But that also doesn't appear on this diagram. Being honest, the production value of this pitch deck is not nearly up to the same quality as previous funding rounds. This frame is especially weak. The 10th frame indicates a multi-phase rollout, where all of a sudden, a 400 cubic meter microgravity station is mentioned for the first time. It's appeared in 2 previous frames, but not explained as to what it was. Apparently, that's what they want to start with now in 2023-2025, a single capsule with almost half the volume of the ISS. That's not in the first frame, nor in the headline graphic for the funding page, but now, on this frame, they appear to want this in orbit before their first ring gets built. Then, if that turns a profit, they can move into building their first gravity structures in 2026 and 2028. And once they start raking in money from those, they can look at moving these structures out into cislunar space and in orbit around Mars. Not kidding, it says so right here. Also into beyond, wherever that is. Would someone like to run the numbers on exactly what it would take to put the ISS into orbit around Mars? Are there any astrophysicists or Kerbal fanatics up for that challenge? If you do give it a shot, leave your comments below and include your conclusions and video link. We'll be happy to post it for you. Now, with this information in hand, can we please get the mainstream media to stop printing articles like this? Compare this article, written in October of 2022, to this timeline from their own pitch deck. Do you see any inconsistency between these 2 stories? Frame number 11, the OAC All-Stars with their goal to develop real estate in space. We have gone through all these before in previous episodes except for Rob Miyake, so here's a quick refresher. Rhonda Stevenson became the CEO and president after OAC expunged John Blankow from the company following their first funding round, which made him a paper multimillionaire. Rhonda's previous ventures include the Space Mining and Resource Coalition, a delinquent incorporated nonprofit founded in May of 2014, according to opencorporates.com. Their company website, spacemining.com, is dead, and the company cannot be found on ProPublica, which reports on records for all nonprofits in the US. Also, Rhonda was the CEO for Blue Elysium Capital Group, another delinquent company that shares the same address of record as the Space Mining and Resource Coalition. The active company at that address happens to be a horse therapy ranch operating as M&M Equestrian Center LLC in Lafayette, Colorado. And Rhonda was also part of Deep Space Industries, where she likely crossed paths with at least 2 other players currently involved in Orbital Assembly, namely John C. Mankins and James Wolfe. Rhonda was the Chief Promotions and Sales Officer for that organization before it was bought out by Bradford Space in 2019. For the video that launched the 2021 NetCapital raise for OAC, with John Blankow at the helm, Rhonda Stevenson was only introduced as an advisor for OAC, along with Mankins. At the time, James Wolfe was the CBO of OAC, and he's since been downgraded to an advisor on their website. Shortly after the first fundraising round, John Blankow was completely scrubbed from the OAC website, Facebook page, LinkedIn profile, completely scrubbed. He was chairman of the board, chief executive officer, co-founder, president, and majority shareholder, and he got disappeared. Afterwards, Blankow renamed his Gateway Foundation into the Gateway Spaceport LLC, and last May started yet another company called Off-World Industries Corporation USA. Yes, John Blankow will be getting his own episode very soon as well. Stevenson immediately replaced Blankow as CEO at Orbital Assembly and continues to serve in that role. No explanation was ever given as to why Blankow was given the boot or why this serial entrepreneur, with at least 2 delinquent companies on her record, was given his job. Stevenson is also involved in the Tau Zero Foundation, which we are going to cover in detail later when we get to Jeff Greason and his company Electric Sky on the Strategic Partners page. Tim Alatorre, current chair of the board, chief operating officer, and current faceman for the company, is an architect who thinks he can design space hotels despite having never worked on any device in orbit today. The architect firm he founded, Domum, has their logo on many of the original CGI frames used to raise cash for John Blinkow's Gateway Foundation, because Tim put them together. The Gateway Foundation, including Alatorre, who is on the board of both Gateway Foundation and Orbital Assembly at the same time, used these CGI images in international mainstream media articles to dupe people into believing this is what their 2025 space hotel suites would look like, which encouraged people in turn to buy crew memberships with Gateway that would never amount to anything. You can still find these images online, and most of them continue to surface in recent mainstream media pieces. After OAC turfed out John Blinkow, who was the frontman for both Gateway Foundation and Orbital Assembly Corporation for several years, filming his promotional video segments in front of what looked to be the changing room tile walls at the local YMCA pool, Alatorre took over the reins as the spokesperson for the organization and the producer of the video segments, including the Friday with Tim Q&A sessions. Tom Spilker worked for NASA's JPL for 21 years, referring to himself as a principal flight mission architect. Unfortunately, that's not nearly as meaningful as it might appear, since some of the missions he claims to have been associated with were launched well before his tenure at JPL began. Tom's been aligned with the Gateway Orbital Assembly team since the very beginning as yet another former board member of John Blinkow's Gateway Foundation sole proprietorship. So too with Robert Miyake. He was sitting on both the boards of Gateway Foundation and Orbital Assembly with Tim and Tom and John. The only details really available about Miyake are from the Orbital Assembly board bio profile. He's got nothing on his LinkedIn profile at all, although his profile with OAC says he retired from a 30-year career with JPL in 2011, and at some point obviously came out of retirement to attach himself to this. As their thermal engineer, maybe he can answer the question about the radiator cooling panels that don't seem to be in any of their CGI images. Which brings us to frame 12, Strategic Partners, and this is where things are going to get interesting. When we come back, we're going to pick up at this frame and go through this rogues gallery of logos to see who these companies are, what they do, and if there's any information available about what kind of strategic partnership they would have with Orbital Assembly. Click here when you're ready to continue.